Welcome to English Avenue YouTube, the channel to learn English the easy way. Let's start. In a quaint and picturesque village, nestled between rolling hills and endless stretches of emerald green fields, lived a bright and spirited young girl named Lily. From the moment she could walk, she had been a source of boundless joy, her laughter echoing through the meadows and her curiosity leading her to uncover the magic hidden in the simplest moments. She spent her days chasing butterflies that fluttered through the wildflowers, climbing tall trees just to watch the sun melt into the horizon, and waking at dawn to listen to the harmonious melodies of birds greeting the new day. Lily lived in a cozy cottage on the outskirts of town with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, a kind-hearted couple who cherished every moment with their daughter. Their home was always filled with warmth, the scent of freshly baked bread drifting through the air, and the comforting hum of a life lived in peace. To Lily, the world seemed as close to perfect as it could be, a place of adventure, wonder, and endless possibilities. However, as life often does, it was about to present her with a challenge she never expected, one that would test her resilience and reshape her perspective on what truly mattered. One Monday morning, Lily awoke feeling strangely weak. A wave of heat coursed through her body, and as she swallowed, a sharp pain burned in her throat. She tried to sit up, but a sudden dizziness overtook her, forcing her to sink back into the softness of her pillow. Something felt wrong. Her limbs felt heavy, her head ached, and even the soft morning light filtering through the window seemed too bright. Her mother, always attentive, immediately noticed the unnatural pallor on Lily's face and the way her breaths came in shallow, uneven gasps. Concern flashed across her eyes, and without hesitation, she helped Lily dress and hurried her to the village doctor. The small clinic smelled of herbs and antiseptic, a familiar yet unsettling scent. After a thorough examination, the doctor delivered the news they had both feared. Lily had come down with a severe case of the flu. What had started as a minor discomfort quickly escalated into something much worse. The fever raged on, leaving her drenched in sweat and too exhausted to move. The aches in her muscles made even the smallest shifts unbearable, and the constant chills sent shivers racing down her spine, despite the warmth of the blankets piled over her. The days dragged on in a blur of sleepless nights, medicine, and the hushed voices of her parents whispering worriedly just outside her bedroom door. The energy that once made her unstoppable had completely vanished, leaving her feeling trapped in a body that no longer seemed like her own. The days stretched on, and Lily's recovery did not come as quickly as she had hoped. What she had thought would be a brief illness soon felt like an endless cycle of exhaustion. The once lively house, filled with her laughter and boundless energy, had become eerily quiet. She longed for the carefree days of running outside, the joy of playing with her friends, and the simple pleasure of sitting in class, learning and daydreaming. Now confined to her bed, she felt isolated from the world she loved so much. Her parents did everything in their power to care for her, tending to her needs with unwavering patience. They sat by her bedside, cooling her fevered forehead with damp cloths, whispering comforting words as they held her hand. But as the days wore on, Lily began to notice the exhaustion creeping into their eyes. Their smiles, once effortless, now seemed strained. The worry in their voices was growing heavier, their whispered conversations laced with unease. Then, an even greater blow struck their family. Mr. Carter, Lily's father, lost his job without warning. The news hit like a cold gust of wind, leaving behind an unsettling stillness in the air. With no steady income, the family's financial worries multiplied. The cost of medicine and doctor visits continued to rise, and the weight of uncertainty loomed over their once peaceful home. The unspoken tension settled like a shadow over them, a reminder that their struggles were far from over. Lily, though still weak, could sense the growing tension in her home. Even in her fevered state, she noticed the hushed conversations between her parents, the way their voices wavered with concern, and the way they sighed when they thought she wasn't listening. A deep sense of guilt settled in her chest. She hated feeling like a burden to them. She wished with all her heart that she could get better, not just for herself, but so they wouldn't have to worry anymore. But as the days passed, her recovery remained painfully slow. The fever clung to her like an unwanted shadow, and the aching in her body made even the smallest movements exhausting. Her once bright and adventurous spirit began to fade, replaced by a quiet hopelessness. She felt trapped in an endless loop of discomfort, unable to return to the life she so desperately missed. The walls of her room, once a comforting space filled with warmth and familiarity, now felt like the bars of an invisible cage. A heaviness settled over her, an overwhelming sadness that she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just the illness that weighed her down. It was the feeling that no matter how much she wished for it, things would never go back to the way they were. The laughter, the adventures, the carefree moments that had once defined her days all felt like distant memories, slipping further away with each passing moment. One afternoon, as Lily lay in bed staring out the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of something, anything, that might lift her spirits, a gentle knock echoed through the quiet house. She barely had the strength to react, but she watched as her mother moved toward the door, her steps slow and weary. When the door creaked open, Lily heard a familiar voice, one that brought a small flicker of warmth to her heart. Standing there, wrapped in a shawl and holding a large pot of steaming soup, was Mrs. Thompson, their kind-hearted neighbor. Her face was soft with understanding, and her smile carried the warmth of someone who truly cared. Without hesitation, she stepped inside and placed the pot on the kitchen table, the rich aroma of freshly cooked broth filling the air. "I know things have been tough for you lately," she said gently, her eyes filled with sincerity. "But please remember, you're not alone. We are a community, and we are here to take care of each other." Lily felt a lump form in her throat, not out of sadness, but because for the first time in a long while, she realized how much kindness surrounded her. Even in the darkest moments, there were people who cared, people who were willing to help without expecting anything in return. That simple act of generosity was more than just a meal. It was a reminder that no struggle had to be faced alone. That simple gesture, though small in action, carried a depth of meaning that ignited something inside Lily's heart. For the first time in weeks, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with fever, but rather a gentle comfort that spread through her like the first rays of sunlight after a long storm. It was as if, for a moment, the weight of her illness and the worries that had consumed her family lifted just enough for her to see something she had overlooked. There was still kindness in the world. She realized then that, despite the hardships her family was facing, they were not alone. Beyond the uncertainty, beyond the financial struggles and the exhaustion etched into her parents' faces, there existed something stronger: the unwavering love of those around them, the compassion of their neighbor, the quiet sacrifices her parents made each day, and the thought of her friends waiting for her return. All of it was a reminder that no challenge, no matter how overwhelming, was insurmountable with the support of others. The realization didn't cure her overnight, but it gave her something just as valuable: hope. A renewed belief that even in difficult times, there were still moments of light, and that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness had the power to change everything. Inspired by that simple yet profound act of kindness, Lily made a decision. She would no longer dwell on what her illness had taken from her. Instead of mourning the days she had missed, she chose to focus on what she still had. Though she remained confined to her bed, she made an effort to smile more, to find joy in the small victories. Waking up feeling slightly stronger, being able to eat without discomfort, sharing quiet conversations with her parents as they sat by her side. She began to express gratitude for things she had once taken for granted. The warmth of the morning sunlight streaming through her window, the comforting presence of her mother adjusting her blankets, the reassuring sound of her father's voice telling her stories to pass the time. All of these little moments became treasures in her mind. As the days passed, her body slowly but surely began to respond to the care and rest. The fever that had clung to her relentlessly finally began to fade, and the strength that once felt so distant gradually returned. Her limbs no longer felt as heavy, her appetite resurfaced, and the sparkle in her eyes, dulled by weeks of exhaustion, started to shine again. And with each step toward recovery, her spirit reignited. The world that had seemed so distant now felt within reach once more, and she longed for the moment she could return to the life she had missed so dearly. At long last, after what had felt like an eternity, the day arrived when Lily could finally step out of her room and breathe in the crisp, fresh air. The cool breeze caressed her face, carrying with it the sense of blooming flowers and damp earth, reminding her of the world she had longed to rejoin. She closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the sensation, realizing how much she had missed the simple joy of being outside. Not long after, she was strong enough to return to school. As she walked through the familiar halls, the once distant sounds of laughter and chatter surrounded her like a warm embrace. Her friends ran to greet her, their faces beaming with excitement, wrapping her in hugs that made her heart swell with gratitude. They had missed her, and she had missed them even more. In that moment, she understood just how much she had taken for granted before her illness. The friendships, the shared laughter, the little moments that made every day special. With renewed energy, she once again ran freely through the fields, her feet light against the grass. She laughed without restraint, the sound ringing through the open air, as if making up for all the time she had spent in silence. Every sunrise felt brighter, every conversation more meaningful, every experience a treasure. She no longer saw her days as something to be rushed through, but as a precious gift, one to be embraced fully, with joy and appreciation. As Lily reflected on those difficult days, she came to a profound realization. Life would always present challenges, but within them lay valuable lessons. She had learned that gratitude was a powerful tool, capable of transforming even the darkest moments into opportunities for growth. She understood that resilience was what gave her the strength to push forward, even when the path seemed uncertain. And above all, she discovered that kindness, even in the smallest of gestures, could be a guiding light, offering warmth and hope when everything else felt overwhelming. From that moment on, She made a silent promise to herself. Never again would she take the simple joys of life for granted. She would cherish every sunrise, every laugh shared with a friend, every comforting embrace. Just as Mrs. Thompson had been there for her family in their time of need, Lily vowed to be that source of kindness for others, to extend a helping hand whenever she could, and to remind those around her that no one had to face hardships alone. With her heart brimming with gratitude and a renewed passion for life, she embraced each new day with joy and optimism. She no longer feared the challenges ahead, for she knew that even in the toughest times, there would always be light. Hope, she realized, was never truly gone. It was simply waiting to shine again.